Economic activities in Japan and its environs have been affected by the closure of the Volta Textiles Limited. Joy News' Latif Idris visited the factory and has come through with this report.
At its peak, Japan Textiles Limited, now Volta Textiles Limited, used to employ about 3,000 workforce. Today, the factory has just about 1,400 workforce. Now, for the past 6 months, workers here told me they have not been paid. And for the past 3 weeks, workers have been asked to go home because the factory owes ECG. What could be the reason for all this happening here at Volta Textiles Limited? Could some of the workers here have been speaking to me?
The problem is, right now, we are working at a factory, tester, but they are not paying. They are not paying workers. We workers for the factory. So right now, about 6 months now, there are no pay. So we are hungry.
Indeed, the factory was left in one man's hand to handle this company. The one chief executive, he was manning the place, and whatever is happening, we are not hearing anything of it. But we understand he went and signed agreement with GTP. Unfortunately, those things were not in favor of us, because if we are working, at times we're short of raw material, something like a start. The machines have to be stopped for about 3 weeks before they'll bring in this starch. And in fact, he did not handle the place well at all. That brought all this problem.
The temporary closure of the Japan Textiles Limited, now Volta Textiles Limited, is affecting economic activities right here at the Japan market. Now some businessmen and women here have been sharing their thoughts on the temporary shutdown of the factory. I have one such businesswoman here with me. She's going to tell us exactly how the situation is affecting business. You're welcome to Joy News.
Thank you.
The temporary shutdown of the Volta Textiles Limited, is it affecting your business in any way?
Yes, it's affecting us in so many ways.
Can you share with us?
Oh, because of that, the workers are not buying because they are not been paying them. So we are not selling anything in the market. So we have it difficult to eat.
I operate a restaurant here. Yes.
The closure of Volta Textiles Limited, is it affecting business in any way?
Really, it's affecting everything in town. You know, guys are not working, they are not being paid, and in fact, my business is not going, but they eat here a lot. You know, this is where they eat, but now it's like nothing is working out. And the guys are not being paid for over 7 months, and it's like nothing is working out here. And the place is deserted, as you can see.
Things are not going on well. For the past 4 or 5 months, they have not been paying them. So it's very difficult for them. Some of them have a wife and children. It's very difficult even to take care of them.
So savings-wise, your bank, is it affecting?
Yes, it's affecting the banks also.
How is that?
Yes, because we pay them. The salary is not coming. Everything is very difficult.
Joe here is parking early today because he tells me business is not good. You're welcome to Joy News, Joe.
Yeah. My name is called Joe, and those times 92, you know, the environment is very good. And this time you can see everything is very poor. We work at J-Town, you see, at least 6 months, and even pay us, you see, and we still come back to our business. And at least we boys, we are suffering, and we need a good environment that be in J-Town for we, the guys, is to move in normal.
The Ministry of Education says the country's educational framework remains strong and is currently making gains despite a recent global survey placing Ghana last among 76 countries. The OECD economic think tank says the comparisons were based on test scores in 76 countries showing the link between education and economic growth. The results of the survey, according to many experts, suggest a fall in the standard of education in the country. But the Ministry of Education, in a statement released yesterday, says Ghana's education is strong and making gains. My colleague Jaunyan has been telling us much more about the content of the statement.
Well, the statement is basically insisting or stating that Ghana's educational system remains very robust. It's saying that the fact that this OECD report has come out in Ghana is ranking 76 out of the countries surveyed does not necessarily mean that we have the worst educational system in the world. It also talks about the fact that other think tanks across the world have also come out to actually give positive indicators where Ghana's education is concerned. It mentions ODI, which is the it's a British-based think tank, that's the Overseas Development Institute, which published a report captioned Ghana, the Rising Star, Progress in Political Voice, Health and Education. Was published in March 2015. And according to the statement, that report notes that Ghana ranks amongst the highest performing countries in human development in sub-Saharan Africa, especially in terms of health and education. Now, this OECD report specifically talked about maths and science. It did not really talk about the entire educational system. So the statement from the Ministry of Education also narrowed down to the fact that, according to the ministry, in maths and science, they are making strides and they're making efforts to make sure that those two subjects become subjects of excellence and performance excellence in Ghana. It says that it has enlisted the help of two globally renowned mathematicians.
Meanwhile, President of the National Association of Graduate Teachers, Christian Adaipoku, says the country's poor performance in the survey can be attributed to the country's failing economy.
Well, I will not say that entirely it is the best, but I will also not fault them for the defense that they have put in. I think to some extent they are right, and to some extent too, we must admit that certain things are not going on well. If you look at the study that was conducted, OECD is a very credible institution that I know, even though I have my own personal problems with some of the issues that come out, especially concerning PISA. You know, they have one global survey they call PISA. Ghana has not been part of that ranking, and we have a whole lot of problems with it. This is the first time they have brought this kind of study that included some developing countries like Ghana, Morocco, Tunisia, Botswana, South Africa, and Ghana. And if you look at it carefully, they were careful to state clearly that they want to communicate to the world that if we are able to give basic skills in education to children between the ages of 1 and 15, it will translate into economic development. And truly, if you look at the ranking clearly shows that the higher the level of development of a country, the better its education system. If you look at the UK and US, their education system is going down, and that means it's affecting their economy in many ways. The Asian tigers are taking over, and if you look at from number 1 to number 5, you have only Asian countries. Finland, which used to lead education in the world, now is going down because their economy is also going down because of the problem they have with Nokia and so on. It's a whole complex situation. But what I want to say is that this survey, we will not look at it and say that Ghana has a very gloomy picture in terms of education, because we must even pat ourselves in the shoulders for being selected among the about 53, 54 countries in Africa to be part of this survey. They stated in the survey clearly that most of African countries were not selected because they didn't have the data that they could fall on. That means most of the countries don't keep proper data on education outcomes and so on. But we are fortunate we have that, and they included us in the survey. And the survey stated clearly that if they had included more African countries, probably Ghana wouldn't have been the worst. But because we are few, and if you look at all the countries that Ghana competed with in this survey, you will see that Ghana's economy cannot be compared to any of the countries that we were paired with in this survey. And so for me, it is clear that learning outcome has a lot of correlation with the economic development of a country. And so if the economy is good, you get more resources to provide better education for people. But if the economy is not good, it has a whole lot of implications for education. And that is all what we see today. So for me, we still have a lot to do, and we can't just say that we are discounting the survey. The survey is telling us clearly that all is not well with our education system. We need to push more funding there, and that if we are able to provide proper education for our children in the next 15 years, we are going to have about 38% rise in GDP. And that is an overwhelming revelation that we must look at and then make sure that we revise our budgetary allocation on education.
Mr. Daiboku, let me ask this. Would you agree with the many who say that the standards of education in the country has fallen?
For me, that is a sweeping statement that I never have thought to, because a lot of these people say it because that is what they think, but they are not backing them with figures. Figures that are available to us don't indicate that the curve is falling. It doesn't show that. Maybe the pace at which we are rising is not encouraging, but I haven't seen the curve going down.
And would you blame that on probably the state of the economy, like you mentioned earlier?
Yes, absolutely. Education thrives well when the economy thrives, because you'll be able to allocate more resources into education. Yesterday, I went to the Ministry of Education and I saw on the notice board, government releases feeding grants to schools. Why should that be news under normal circumstances? Something that is the role that must be played without any hesitation. But now it's news because we don't even have the money in the first place. So the little that we are able to give is news. So for me, education is not keeping up the pace with the rest of the world, mainly because we don't have the resources to provide it. If children continue to study under trees and you are expecting them to perform well in science and math, I think we are joking. We cannot do that. So, and it is not peculiar to Ghana alone, but many, many countries in the world that are underdeveloped or still developing or in the lower level of them.
Well, former Director General of the Ghana Education Service, Michael Insua, has also been commenting on the country's performance on the survey, or he spoke on the AM show.
Our timetable curriculum is too loaded for this young one. I mean, the evidence is there everywhere, in all the countries. Look, we're talking about Singapore and Malaysia and those. Look, the maximum number of subjects that they do in Malaysia is 6. But 2 of them are just, like religious and moral education. They say they are practical subjects. Practical in the sense that it is not examinable. We tried to do that in Ghana, and there was a huge cry that, hey, we want the children to be, immoral. But you see, for me, it is not enough to measure the morality of a society by people holding certificates. It is the practical application of those tenets of morality. But we didn't succeed, and we had to go back. Because we said we were doing moral education across the curriculum in every subject. Whatever we do, we have to draw moral lessons, and people didn't understand it. And we thought, or we think that every subject must be examined, and we must have chief examiners, and so on. It is important we take a critical look at some of the issues that have been raised over the years, you see, so that we'll be able, so that we're doing what is. Look, we said, the number of years that Kofi Annan and the others took to get to where they were was too long. So we slashed the years in school from 17 to 12 years. 17 years to 12 years. But what we didn't do was to make sure that we, make sure the new system actually make sure they cover the ground that needs to be covered. We're talking about the secondary system. 4 years, 3 years. 3 years, fine, there's no problem if we think it is 3 years. But do we really spend 3 years before they write the exam? Or do we really spend 3 years, cover all the syllables before they write the exam? So these are issues that we need to be looking at.
The Office of the Chief of Staff has given a waiver to tertiary institutions and public hospitals from the ongoing disconnection exercise being carried out by the Ghana Water Company Limited. Deputy Minister of Water Resources, Works and Housing, Samson Ahi, has however charged the institutions not to take undue advantage of the directive.
Most of the government hospitals and then the public universities own Ghana Water Company huge sums of monies. And there's a directive from the Chief of Staff Office that because of the sensitive nature or because of the services rendered by hospitals and the public universities, Ghana Water Company should not disconnect them. But because of that, most of them are hiding behind that directive, and they are refusing to pay the debts on Ghana Water Company. So what I'm saying is that that directive does not mean that they should not pay the debts they owe Ghana Water Company. Rather, because Cabinet in their wisdom knows that if you go and disconnect Kolebu, Konfanotri, you are creating problem because we will lose lives. And so don't disconnect them. But the authorities in such institutions and sit down with Ghana Water Company authorities and then come out with payment terms, arrangements to pay the debt. So I am calling on them that the directives that do not suggest that they should refuse to pay or they should not pay the debt they own Ghana Water Company. Because Ghana Water Company needs to get resources so that they can continue to provide water for them to use to provide services for Ghanaians.
Why did we wait for so long for the debt to accumulate to become huge sums of monies that they can no longer pay at a go before we start saying that, okay, we will not disconnect you, but let's set out modalities for payment?
Yeah, I think they took advantage of the fact that they know that they cannot be disconnected, as I've said earlier, because of the sensitive nature of the services that they provide. And a place like Konfanotri, if you go and disconnect Konfanotri today, you can imagine the number of lives that we lose. You understand? But with that water running in the hospitals, there's no way doctors can work. You understand? And so it just makes sense. That is why the cabinet gave that directive. But the caveat here is that it doesn't mean that they should not pay. But because of the reason, what you suggested now, that is why we are now also asking them that, yes, we will not disconnect you, but that does not mean that you should not pay your bills.
The Supreme Court has dismissed a suit brought by the Progressive People's Party to compel government to implement the free compulsory universal basic education program. My colleague Kwache Afer Nyama witnessed today's court proceedings and joins me with much more on that. Kwache, so Afer, what happened in court today?
Well, today the expectation was that the court would provide its judgment or ruling on the matter, but it did that by dismissing the case brought by the PPP, as you mentioned. But the 7-member panel presided over by Justice Julius Ansah did not provide any reason for their ruling. In fact, the court has indicated that this will be done on July 28th, and I mean the reason for dismissing the case brought by the Progressive People's Party. But of course, today many of the party's top officials, including the flag bearer himself, Dr. Papa Kwesi Ndum, and National Secretary Kofi Sian, were in court. Government was also represented by Principal State Attorney Efuaba. So sadly, the two parties will have to wait for more than a month to know why the Supreme Court ruled in that direction.
So what has been the reaction from particularly Papa Kwesi Ndum and his lawyers?
I spoke to Mr. Ndum after court proceedings today. He says that sadly they are disappointed with the ruling because to them the constitution is quite clear on how this FQ program should be implemented. But he says that they are not giving up on the advocacy yet. They will still push. As to whether they will appeal this decision, he did not say, but he says that they will use their force as a political party to, and their influence as well, to push forward their agenda.
I see. So as of now, they do not have much to do than to wait and come at a later date for the reasons for this particular dismissal.
Exactly, Chen.
Okay, thank you very much, Afre, for that update. Kwache Afre is my colleague right here at Joy News. He was in court. He brought us the very latest on that ruling on the FQ. We're taking a quick break here. We'll be back with someone. You stay with us. That'll be it for the news this hour. Before we go, a recap of our top stories on News Today. National Association of Graduate Teachers attributes Ghana's bottom place ranking on recent Maths and Science survey to the country's failing economy. Also, Supreme Court dismisses a suit filed by Progressive People's Party to compel government to implement the free compulsory universal basic education, FQ. You also heard in business, the Association of Ghana Industries expressing shock at the increment of the policy rate by the central bank. And that's it for news this hour. My name is Kwabna Chenchen. For more news, do well to log on to myjournline.com. Have a good afternoon.